Welcome, everybody. I'm going to take this out. Thank you so much for coming. We are so excited at this point to bring to you guys our fifth annual Sophomore Symposium, probably one of our best programs that we offer. It's just a really great time for you guys as students and as parents to hear about prepping for life after high school now, because believe it or not, there are things you can be doing now. We have an amazing panel of admissions reps who do various things at the colleges that they work at. And our own Marguerite Ramo is going to be moderating and will be introducing everybody to you. I ask that you hold questions until the end because we will have time for questions and answers, and we welcome all questions. So enjoy the night. Thank you.
So as Mrs. Dunnick said, before you know it, you're going to be juniors and then seniors and then moving on past high school. And there's a lot of information that it's good to have beforehand. Most of you are going through course selection right now. That will affect some of your college applications. So this is a perfect timing for this. I really want to express my sincere gratitude to the panelists. They're giving their evening and sharing their wisdom. Initially, I was trying to calculate, without being very specific, but we have well over 60 years of admissions professional experience sitting before you. That doesn't matter. Because I do the admissions thing. So as we said, please wait to the end, and I will take questions and repeat them for the whole audience, and then we'll let our experts respond to your questions. So the first topic we're going to talk about is really preparing for college and building your resume. And Heidi Erickson, who is the Senior Associate Director of Admissions and Director of Events at Quinnipiac University, is going to be our first presenter.
So it's great to be here this evening because for all of us in admissions, this is the point where two ends of the college process collide. We're working with sophomores and juniors in high school who are getting ready to charge into the college process, but we're also kind of in the thick and hopefully seeing the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of working with our senior applicants to put together our freshman class. So for all of us, we're really excited to be here. So I'm going to talk about preparing for college and building your resume. The first thing I'm going to encourage you all to do, if you haven't done it already, is to look at your transcript or your report cards and look at the types of classes that you've taken in high school. And ask yourself about the strength of your academic program. Have you challenged yourself with the 5 traditional core courses: English, math, science, social science, and a foreign language? How many years as a freshman of those traditional subject areas have you had? You want to make sure that you have no less than 4 traditional subject areas. However, my comfort level would be that you have 5, because each year you're wanting to build on to that foundation. And what you're doing at this point is you're building the college foundation so that when you go off to college, this will help you be able to figure out what majors you can go into and do so comfortably with good transition because you built a foundation in the English, math, science, social science, and foreign language. So as you're looking towards junior year, you want to be very mindful of the courses that you're selecting. And you want to make sure that each year you're showing that you're ready for that next step with college. As you're looking at your transcript or your grades, notice by subject area if you see any trends by semester. So when I talk about that, are you looking at your transcript and are you noticing that there are any subject areas where maybe you don't do as well as you might in other areas? All right. So look at those areas and see if there are things that you could be doing to add strength or to improve in those different subject areas. Sometimes students, when they get to high school, they don't realize how quickly the college process is going to be upon them. So they may think freshman year doesn't count. So they may also be a little bit more interested in kind of building their social circle. And then by the time they get to their junior year, they're thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't know that freshman year counts. So we want to make sure that your grades are either consistently good or you're on an upward trajectory and you're doing very well with that. Also, ask yourself, have you worked as hard in high school at this point as you could? If you're not, if you think you can give it a little bit more, you want to do that because you're kind of building the momentum, and college is not going to be any easier than your most challenging day of high school. So again, it's building that momentum. Also, if there are areas that you're interested in terms of studying, different occupations, some students might say, you know, I'm really interested in going into engineering, all right? You need to know what kinds of courses colleges want you to have. So for engineering, very likely you should have at least 4 years of math, including pre-calculus, and you also want to make sure that you have physics. If you're interested in business, you want to make sure that you're taking at least pre-calculus, maybe calculus. If you're getting ready to go into psychology, you may want to consider taking statistics. So these are some of the things that as you're thinking about different programs of studies, different occupations, you want to find out what kinds of courses are going to give you the best background to enter into that particular field easily. The other thing is that have you challenged yourself to the best of your ability and appropriately? So if you came in freshman year and you're taking kind of a regular college prep curriculum, and you're noticing that you've got straight A's, well, are there any subject areas that you might be able to boost the level of courses up a little bit? And that doesn't mean that if you're struggling to get a C in an honors course, that you're automatically going to make that jump into an AP English, because that's probably not going to be your best step. So, but again, if there's room for you to add a little bit of challenge and strength to the levels of courses that you're taking, consider doing that as well. The other part I'm going to encourage you to do is think about you academically as a student. Do you participate in class? Because that's really important. As you're getting ready to go off to college, you want to be able to speak up, share your ideas, but also feel good with your voice and kind of showing what you've been studying. Because I think a lot of times when you go off to college, you may be working in groups, and it's helpful when you're an active participant in your class to kind of better get the concepts of what you're studying. So that's important. Are you someone who pays attention to assignments? Do you do your homework? That's really key. And again, we're talking about preparing for college because when you go off to college, you may have homework assignments, but they may not collect them. So it's going to be important that you're keeping up with your studies. Also, in high school, those homework assignments can be factored into what your grades are. And if you're not doing your homework, and let's say you've got, straight A's on your exam, but your participation rate is low, or you're not doing your homework, colleges aren't going to say, oh, you know what, that D, that's just because of the homework that they haven't been doing. You need to do your part as a student to earn the appropriate grades that are going to best show your ability. The other thing is do you go for extra help? Are there subject areas that just don't come as easily? For me, I break out in a sweat with math. So do you go seek help after school? Do you have a tutor? Or are there students in your class that you can study with that can kind of help you understand a little bit better that subject area? The other thing is, how well do you manage your time? Because I think a lot of us, when you get ready to go off to college, you're not going to be in classes Monday through Friday from 7:55 to 2:02. There are going to be big chunks of time in your day. And how well are you going to manage your time to make sure that you're getting everything done? Are you organized? Are you able to keep track of your homework assignments, of your papers? So that's also falls in line with the time management. All of these things that I've mentioned are all pieces that are going to help you prepare to go off to college and to be a college student, a successful college student, but also to be organized. The other thing is, too, is that there may be times in college where you're taking a class that you've never encountered before, and it may be a little bit challenging. So if you're able to be a self-advocate and say, you know what, I don't quite understand that, then when you go off to college, you're going to be just the perfect person to be able to deal with that next challenge, that next chapter, because we won't have to worry about you slipping between the cracks because you're either going to go meet with your teacher or a classmate, or maybe go to any learning commons at that college or university to get extra help. The other thing is that when you're picking your courses, it's not just the grades that you get, because a lot of times when we're at college fairs, students will say, so what kind of GPA are you looking for? Well, it's not just the GPA, but again, it's the consistency, it's the level of challenge that you've been working with. So at this point, I've talked all about the academic piece and kind of preparing yourself for the next step. But now I want to talk about you outside the classroom. I want to talk about the interests, the hobbies, the resume that you will be putting together when you actually apply to colleges. So, for example, if you're interested in a particular health field, well then, you know what, one of the things that you're going to want to add to your resume are clinical hours, maybe doing some job shadowing with a medical professional that you would like to become, or working in a hospital, or if you've got an interest in going into law, maybe in your town there's a law firm where you might be able to get a part-time job or an internship just to kind of see what that would be like. One of the things that I also find too is that people love to talk about themselves and talk about what they're doing, especially if they're excited about what they're doing. So if you're starting to think about different occupations, see if you can set up a time to go in and talk to somebody in your town that has a job that you think would be really kind of neat. Because my good guess is that they would love to spend some time talking with you. What do you do when you're not in class and when you're not doing homework? So think about clubs, jobs, sports, community service. What kinds of things have you always wanted to try? Maybe it's a sport. Maybe you started off freshman year and you thought, wow, I'd really love to be a soccer player. You went through a semester or a year playing soccer and you decided, that wasn't quite my thing, but I think I'd like to try something else. Don't be afraid to try it, because you're not going to know if you like it until you give it a shot. And also, in terms of getting involved in activities at schools, one of the things that you realize is that you connect with people who would think like you do, or have like-minded interests. Well, that same kind of thing when you go off to college is going to give you an opportunity to feel a part of the larger community by getting involved in different clubs and organizations. And so if you've always wanted to get into theater, give it a shot, even if it's doing stage crew or community service. Maybe there's an opportunity in the fall with one of the clubs or organizations. Some schools have Interact or have Key Club, which is a student-based community service organization. And maybe they go out and they're raking leaves for the elderly. Do those kinds of things. Look at different kinds of leadership opportunities that you can get involved with. But don't feel like you have to be a president of something in order for that activity to count. Because we're also looking for a student's commitment to the activity. Have you shown up every, maybe 3 times a semester to that activity? Or are you somebody that goes to that activity on a weekly basis? Because to be a team player is something that's really important. The other thing is start putting together a resume of the activities that you have gotten involved with. And when I talk about a resume, don't think that it has to be something particularly formal. It can be freshman year and the different activities that you're involved with. sophomore year and the different activities that you've been involved with. And start putting those things together now, because when it comes time to fill out your application for admissions, you won't have to think, all right, now what was it that I did in my sophomore year? What was that activity I did freshman year? Okay, think about that. Some other more practical things that I'm going to encourage you to think about is, do you have a job? Have you earned a paycheck? Do you have a bank account where you're actually able to manage your money? This is preparing for college. Do you know how to do laundry? Sounds kind of basic, but do you do laundry at home? Because when you go off to college, you're going to have to do laundry. How good are you about communicating? You know, if you have a problem, are you able to approach the person and be straightforward with that? Because when you live at a college or university, if you decide to be a residential student, you're living with a group of strangers, and no matter how great that roommate connection is, you're different people. So, you know, you have conflicts at home. So, of course, when you go off to college, you're going to have conflicts. So you need to be able to kind of work your way through it. How good are you about asking questions if you don't know the answer to something? Or is it always, Mom, Dad, would you ask that question? No, start asking the questions, because the more questions you start to ask, the easier it's going to be, so that when you go off to college, you're going to be able to problem solve a lot more easily, because you're starting to practice at this point to find out the answers to things. The other thing is that, have you discussed with your parents financing education? Okay? Because if you haven't, that might be something to talk about, because as you're looking at colleges, one of the things that you might want to ask about when you go to business school is what kind of scholarships are available, what kinds of financial aid. So these are things to start talking about with your parents at this point. And don't be shy about that, because the time that you don't want to have this conversation is in April of the senior year, prior to that May 1st deadline, when you're having to decide where you're going to go. Okay? But these are just a few things that I suggest that you think about as you're getting ready to prepare for school.
So one of the things you're going to eventually start hearing, you probably will hear it from seniors in the fall of their senior year, juniors in the spring of their junior year, and it's like, oh, do you have a list yet? Do you know what schools you're applying to? What's your list like? Diane Spassky, who is the Director of Admissions at Champlain College in Vermont, she came all the way from Vermont just to do this, is going to speak to you about building your list.
So who's got their list ready? Careful to raise your hand, I might make you say it. No. All right. So, earlier on in my college years, people would say, do you have an idea of where you want to apply? And if I asked you that, not to say it out loud, but most of you might say, yeah, sure, I've got 1 or 2 or 3 schools, right? People think of 1 or 2 or 3 schools they might want to apply to. And then if we start to dig a little deeper, and I say, what do you know about those schools? I don't want to know what their mascot is. I don't want to know what teams they have. I don't want to know how pretty their buildings are that you've seen online. But you know what the size of their classes are, their classrooms, how big are their classroom spaces, what opportunities do they provide for their students, what's the environment like in the residence halls for students, how many people live on campus versus off. Do you know that about those schools? And that's where you really need to start thinking about not only the schools that you know really well, that you've heard of, that your friends have gone to, but keeping in mind that there are over 4,000 colleges in the U.S. alone, right? This is if you're staying in the U.S. for college. Don't tell your parents you're going out of the U.S. for college right now, they might panic, right? We'll talk about that later. But there are a lot of opportunities out there, right? So the first thing that I want to stress is to be open to new possibilities. This does not mean that you can't apply to where the school you've always wanted to go to, the school you've dreamed of going to, but it means that you're probably going to want to look at other options as well too. And what are some of the best ways to do that? So I really think that you live in a great part of the country to be able to explore colleges, right? We all were able to drive here today, none of us had to fly, which means that if we got here tonight, You can get to our campuses as well too, right? We're not in Canada, we're in Burlington, Vermont, so you can make it there. In one tank of gas, you can get here. But be open to trying out new areas. And what I would suggest is taking advantage of some of the tours and local opportunities that you have here. So even if it's not a school that you think you're going to want to apply to, you're not 100% sold on applying to, go and take the tour. Maybe even this summer, right? Take a couple of college tours. Look at very different institutions. Look at a large public institution, and then go that very next day to a small private institution, right? Look at different types. And keep a little notebook, keep notes on your iPhone, whatever you want to do. What did you like about that school? What didn't you like about that school? So if you visit a school and you say, I don't think it's for me, I don't want to apply here, that's okay. But why? There's got to be something, one or two things that you liked about it, and then you're going to have a bunch of things you don't like about it if that's not where you want to go, right? And from that list of what I like, what I don't like, that's how you're going to craft your college list with your counselors in the end of your junior and the beginning of your senior year. That's where you're going to go in and you're going to be able to tell them, this is what I really connect with, this is what I really enjoy on a college tour on campus, and these are the aspects I'm just not looking to add into my experience, right? Because if you come back to your college counselors and you say, no, I liked it, but I don't know if it's right for me, they're going to ask you why, right? And what they're looking for is what were those things that you were really excited about, what things just not gel, right? So start making those lists. And if you go on a few tours and you start to build that list, your counselors will then be able to help you with what they'll call crossover schools, or schools that are similar to the ones you really like, right? So if you found a school that you really like and you can articulate why you like it, they will have the knowledge and the skills to be able to help you find other schools that you can look into. And what I'm asking is that you don't write those schools off right away just because you've never heard of them, right? So I had a list of, my 3 or 4 schools sophomore year that I knew I was going to apply to. In my senior year, a school got added to my list because somebody said, it looks just like your top choice, right? It looks just like it. It has the same feel, the same vibe on campus. Great. Fine, I'll add it in. My counselor wanted me to add it in. I got accepted to both. I went to both accepted students days. Didn't like my first choice at accepted students day. Didn't gel with the students. Didn't feel like it was the right place for me. And I ended up at a great school, spent 4 years there, was president of my class. I'm on the alumni board of a school that I added to my list because it looks like another school, right? I'd never heard of it. So this is what I'm telling you when you need to be open to these possibilities and trying things out. So when you're looking through schools and looking for characteristics, what are some of the things you should be looking for? What are some, what does anyone know what they're looking for in a college? Does anyone know they want to go to school in a city in terms of location? Who wants to be near a city? A couple. Does anyone want to be in a really super rural area? So looking at the nest egg schools? That's right, rural area. Is anyone looking to be in more of a suburban area? So not downtown city, but there's stuff around, things to do. Okay, so there's 5 people who know which of those locations they want to be in. The rest of you want to think about that, right? What about the size of the school? Who knows they want to go to a really big school? Big 10 type school, over 40,000 students. Okay, we've got a couple of those. Who says that is really scary to me? I'd rather go to a college where I can know people, where I can walk around, and there's under 2,000 students there. A couple people, right? Who wants something in the middle? I don't want to know everyone. I don't want to know my business, but I want to be able to recognize faces. These are the things to think about, right? Size is going to be important. Location is going to matter to you. How many people, parents, don't look at your students in Clareton right now. How many people know they want to go away for college? Away from Connecticut. A few people. How many people are like, I would like to stay right here as close, can I walk home if that's possible? Other couple. I just saw a couple parents raise their hands, right? Who could walk home to wherever they're going, right? What's the distance, right? Students are going to have their circle that they draw. I want to go outside of this circle. When I did that, my mom said, that's nice, you're going to stay inside this circle, right? So these are the conversations to have. You need to find where that little Venn diagram overlaps, right? What's comfortable for your parents, what's comfortable for you as well. Cost, was alluded to earlier. Cost is going to be a consideration in looking. Do not panic when you see the price tag of some of these colleges, because what I would say is that even some of the uber expensive private schools that I've worked at are able to offer a good amount of financial aid that made us more affordable than some of the the less expensive alternatives, right? So it's going to be a very individualized conversation for your family. Every single college has a net price calculator on their website somewhere. It's federally mandated, they have to have it. So you can ask them for it, and you fill out that calculator, and you get a sense of what your family would qualify for at that school. And what your family, and what your family, and what your family are going to qualify are all going to be different, right? Because you're going to be put in different variables in different situations. So you want to, but you do want to keep that in mind. That's something that you want to talk about. Don't write a school off because of cost, but be aware of it. What about public versus private? Do you want to be in a public institution? Do you want to be in a private institution? What majors are offered at that college? Is it more of a residential campus? Does it have more commuters? What does that do to influence the culture and the climate on campus, and how do you feel about that? And also just the vibe you get on a campus, right? I don't know if any of you have toured campuses or visited with older siblings or things. Has anyone been dragged around on college tours before with an older sibling? That's always my favorite, to see like the 4th and 5th and 6th graders being dragged around campus or younger, right? And you kind of get a sense of like, ooh, this is a cool place, or I don't know if this is right for me. Might be right for my sibling, but might not be right for me. I do think it's really important to make a concerted effort and a point to look at 3 to 5 colleges that you have never heard of before, right? If you're a counselor or someone in your life says, check out this college, it's pretty easy to do online right now, right? When many of us were applying to college, I had to call and ask them to send me a book of all the pictures and everything, right? I wasn't looking online. I wasn't applying online when I was applying to colleges, but you can. You can do a virtual tour sitting on your couch on your iPhone, right? So you're able to look around, see what that campus looks like, and take advantage of that. That can't be the only thing you do, but it can be a first step. If someone recommends college, take 5 minutes of your day and check it out. And then you'll say, no, maybe I want to look into this more. No, I checked it out, but I don't think it's for me. But make a point to get to know. You may also find a college that is right for someone else in your life, right? You'll say, I don't think this is right for me, but I know my friend, from physics class is going to love this college, so I'm going to recommend it. Trust your counselors. So this is my plug for them, right? They've been doing this for a while. They've helped a lot of students apply to college. They've helped a lot of students find the right fit. They're going to guide you. They're going to help you. They're not going to tell you where to apply. They're not going to make you apply anywhere. They're also not going to tell you if they think you're making a mistake. Even if they know you might be making a mistake, right? They're going to help guide you there on your own. So trust your counselors. Be honest with them. Be open with them. If you go in and you shoulder shrug, how was the visit? Did you like the college? They're not going to have a lot of information to go off and to be able to help you, right? So go in, be honest with them, bring in that pros cons list that you're doing for different colleges and say, this is what I'm looking for, this is really not what I'm interested in, this is what we've talked about with my parents, right? But they will be able to help you, they'll be able to guide you. They visit a lot of college campuses, so they might have some suggestions for you. Again, write those down, check them out, humor them. Maybe like me, you'll find one that's the perfect fit, right? But they're a really valuable resource, and you're lucky to have counselors that are so engaged in wanting to start this process for you as sophomores. A lot of high schools out there don't have this, right? So take advantage of it, right? When people are offering you free resources, the older in life you get, the more you realize that people are offering you free resources and help, take it, right? Parents, resist the urge to push your child towards or away from a certain college, right? So some of you may have this relationship with your children that I had with my parents, where every college that my father said you absolutely have to apply here, I took off my list the next day, right? So what's the fastest way to get Diane to take something off her list is to have people telling me you have to do this, right? Where if you say, check this out, I think this would be a great school for you because of X, Y, Z, let them check it out, let them form their own opinions, right? So you really want to resist the urge to push too strongly. Because it's not, at the end of the day, it is a family decision, but it's going to be where your child is going to be living and spending 4 years of their life. So they have to be comfortable there. What you don't want is them calling you and crying freshman year and saying, I didn't want to come here, but you made me, right? So you need to be open to the fact that maybe your vision of what the perfect school for them would be might be different than your child's, right? But this is a conversation and dialogue we should be having, not just a struggle back and forth. Throwing schools on the list, taking schools off, throwing schools on, taking them off. You do want to be mindful of how many schools is too many. Everyone asks that, right? If you fill out the common application and it says you've hit the limit, that's enough, right? That's too many. I had a student call me 2 years ago and say, so I can't apply to your school because I've already applied to 22 schools and Common App doesn't let you apply anymore. And I said, okay, that's great. There's 22 schools ahead of us on your list that that's what you're telling your admissions counselor. So be mindful of that, right? There is a number that's too many because if you're applying to over 22 schools, you really haven't taken the time to self-reflect on a good college list for you and what you're truly looking for. There are a lot of great colleges out there, but you've got to kind of whittle it down, right? Mindfully, purposefully, but you've got to take the time to do that before your senior year of your applying. And lastly, I will just say to trust the process. It does work out. All of us have seen a lot of really stressed out students applying, and it works out for them, right? We are here to help you. We are admissions counselors. We're not denial counselors. We're here to help people get admitted into school. We're here to help you find the right fit. It doesn't do us any good if you come to our institution and you don't like it and you leave, right? We're trying to help you make that match and make that fit. So trust your counselors and trust us as well, too, to help coach you through the process. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to kind of take a chance on applying to some schools you haven't heard before. Doesn't mean you have to go there. Doesn't mean you're signing on the dotted line, but you're taking a chance to commit to look at them. And I think that will really help open up your possibilities for senior year.
Thank you, Diane. Next, we're going to talk a little bit more about the academic part of the application, your transfer, rigor, grades and test scores. And you are applying to college to be a student, so the grades and all that do count and they do matter. So Winnie Maloney is admissions counselor at Trinity College in Hartford. Winnie?
Hi everyone. So good to see you all here. It's a really great room. It was a really nerve-wracking process, so hopefully we can start to demystify it a little bit for you tonight. I'm going to be speaking about the academic component of the application. So when admissions officers open an application, the first thing that they turn to is that academic component. So first we're going to be looking at the school profile. So the school profile is sent to us from the school. It's a really great explanation and a summary of the curriculum offered here. So we get to see how many honors level classes are offered, how many APs are offered, see kind of the general gist of the school. And then we turn to the transcript where we see what you took advantage of during your time here. So as Heidi mentioned previously, we do want to see that you are challenging yourself in your junior and senior year. So as you're going through your course selection, think to yourself, okay, I know I really, really enjoy my English classes and I do well in them. Maybe I'll sign up for an honors level, or maybe I want to take advantage of an AP offered here. So definitely think to yourself what you are excelling at these past 2 years and kind of turn your attention to maybe more rigorous levels of those classes in the next 2 years. People ask all the time, how many is too many? And you don't, you could sign up for all of the APs and honors if you really want to, but we do think, it's really quality over quantity. So if you sign up for all of these AP classes and then end up getting C's in them, that might not have been the best decision for you. So thinking about what your strengths are, really utilize those. Really focus on those, hone in on those, because that's what's going to be important to you as you become a college student. Something else that we're going to look at on the transcript is the GPA. So GPA is calculated a little bit differently at most institutions, but that is still a number that we do look at and incorporate into your academic evaluation of who you are and where you kind of fit in within your class. Also, we'll consider class rank. So that is a very important number, so do try to pay attention to it, but don't stress out about it. I don't want you, losing sleep over the fact that you're a certain number, or what if I could have been one more number higher. It is an important number, as is the GPA, but we do want you focusing on your performance in class overall. That is really the most important point of this whole conversation. So when I mentioned rigor, we are mentioning it within the context of your school. So the school profile is a really helpful tool for us to see how you fit in with your own school's level of rigor, but we're not going to be comparing you to students from other institutions. That's really just not fair. because some schools, don't offer any AP classes. Some schools offer upwards of 20 or 30. So really it's, we're not taking you and looking at someone from a neighboring town or a different state. We're really looking at how you performed here. So thinking also about testing. So some schools are test optional and then others do require some test scores. So when you're thinking about compiling your lists, do think, oh, maybe I'm not a great test taker, so I'll incorporate some test optional institutions into my list. But the two tests that we'll be hearing a lot about for you for the next 2 years are the SAT and the ACT. So it's kind of interesting how more popular the tests are regionally. Typically in New England, we've seen that the SAT is a little bit more popular, but nationally the ACT is becoming more popular. So the difference, there are a few differences with these tests, but most importantly, the ACT has a science component. So if you are a more science-minded student, do think about sitting for an ACT and seeing how you like it as opposed to the SAT. But thinking about test optional schools, those are a really great option for students who don't think that they are great at testing or they feel that there's a lot of anxiety surrounding these tests. So I do work at a test optional institution. We do still have students submitting those test scores. So just know if you do choose to submit your test scores to a test optional institution, if it's not, a strong test score for their standards, they're not just going to disregard it. So something that kind of falls on you to do as families is to research the average or middle 50 for the test scores of these institutions. So that information will be found on a lot of websites or a lot of those college pamphlets. So really take a look at those numbers and see where you as a student fit in within that. So if you think you might really love a school and then you realize if it's a test required school and your score doesn't really reflect their average or middle 50, so the middle 50% looking at, the 25th to the 75th percentile of those schools, maybe consider, not making that your top choice. So we do want you to be, making sure that you are putting those dream schools on your list, but that you're keeping in mind your performance in school most importantly, but also those test scores if this school does require testing. All right, so thinking about testing a little bit more, the PSATs are really a great way to start as you prep for the SATs. So the PSATs will send you back your score report with an explanation of where you can improve. So do use that and take it to heart, and that can be where you start. So the SAT and the ACT both very stressful, but there are a lot of great resources available that are pretty low cost or even free. So there are sites that will send you questions every day that are practice, so you can really spend some time on them, more time than you would be able to in a test, and really kind of see the types of questions that are being asked. But there are a lot of great resources available for students who don't think that they are the best test takers, but we do want to, mention again that there are test optional institutions out there. So when you're compiling on your list, do think, okay, am I academically what I see explained on this website or on this pamphlet? But yeah, risk of repeating anyone else or saying anyone else's toes, I know we do want to leave room for questions. I am going to turn it back over, but again, do take some deep breaths during this process. We want you to be putting your best foot forward in this process, and yeah, you'll end up exactly where you need to end up.
Thank you very much, Winnie. So Winnie talks a lot about, and Heidi did as well, a lot about specific data points. But there also is a fabulous opportunity to tell the colleges a little bit more about you, and that's the essay. And Alfred Hildebrand, who is the director of undergraduate admissions at Fairfield University, is going to talk a lot about the non-academic, including the essay and the letters of recommendation.
Thank you for having me. I have the pleasure of talking about some of the fun stuff in the application process. The essay is my absolute favorite part of the college record of learning that you have as a result of being a high school student. Hopefully the resume that you create is not just to apply to college, but it's a record of all the things you enjoy doing and you participated in and contributed to your community throughout high school. So the essay is the only thing you're creating specifically for the college application process. And so often I hear from students, there's nothing exciting about me, or I haven't suffered a tragedy, or nothing, I haven't climbed Everest or cured cancer. How do I write a great college essay? You still can. Some of the best essays we receive are the essays that are about the things that students seem to think are the more mundane, boring parts of their lives. So for example, one of my all-time favorites, I've been doing this for 14 plus years, a young woman wrote about her life as a diner waitress and what she learned about her community and humanity when she overheard people's conversations on a Sunday morning while she refilled their water. People didn't stop talking as she was refilling their beverage. So she heard a lot of conversations about the community around her, and she just talked a little bit about what she learned. We had a young man write about his love for superheroes and the evolution of understanding of where superheroes came from, their role in society, and why he likes Superman better than Batman. Age appropriate, really well written. I think that's key too. If you're coming to college, it has to be a well-written piece of work. Grammar and spelling does count. So make sure it's well written, but we want to know who you are at 17 and 18. We get you in your daily life at 17 and 18 on our college campuses. So who are you? What's going on? It does not have to be that you won a Grammy or recording your album. So don't panic, obviously, but think about it. It does need to be something that you can't sit down the night before it's due and write your essay. Many schools are common application schools, so you can write the same essay for many institutions. However, there are a lot of institutions out there that will require supplemental essays from you, or will ask for, or who are not in common application, will ask for a different essay altogether. That's something else you need to pay attention to, and some of them are really, college admissions nerd, I've been doing this forever. I think they're kind of fun, but they aren't things you can come up with in the space of a couple of hours. So University of Chicago is notorious for some really interesting supplemental essay questions. So one of them, the prompt is just find X. And so what are you going to do with find X? One of them is where is Waldo really? I love these. Students look at me like I'm crazy when I say that, but I love some of these essay prompts. But those are two good examples of essays you can sit down right now in an hour without an essay that's really thoughtful. When a school asks you a supplemental essay, it says a lot about who they are as an institution, what they're looking for in their students. So if you're not reading these essay prompts and thinking, oh, this is really cool, I can't wait to dive in, think about what it might say about fit. Doesn't mean you're not a good fit, but think about what it might say about fit. So keep that in mind. Your letters of recommendation, they're another good way for us to get to know you through the admission process. First of all, let me tell you, if the school says they do not want letters of recommendation, they do not want letters of recommendation. They're not tricking you, so don't send them in anyway. I have colleagues who just stick them in the shredder if it's not something that they require. On the other end of the spectrum, if the school says we'd like to see letters of recommendation, and they specify who they want to see letters from and how many, pay attention to that and send those. We're not in this business to mislead you or to trick you, so we tell you exactly what we want. If we want 2 letters of recommendation, one from a teacher in humanities and one from a teacher in sciences, provide that to us. My best advice to you as you're asking for letters of recommendation from teachers, coaches, employers, whomever, find someone who likes you. That might sound like an obvious one, but we do get bad letters of recommendation. They're funny and fascinating. I feel bad for the students, but they're kind of funny. We had a young man once who the teacher wrote, "I'm not a doctor, but there's something seriously wrong with this kid." I had one once where the teacher said, the best thing I can say about this student, or the best quality the student has is that he can eat kiwi whole skin and all in under 5 minutes. That's the best thing you can say about a student. So we do get things like this. So make sure that it's someone who likes you. So start there. It's not a bad thing to have a teacher write you a letter of recommendation thinking you struggle. If we get all letters of recommendation from teachers in your classes, you've caught straight A's, maybe they've never seen you work through a challenge. If you ask a teacher who gave you the lowest grade on your report card, they've seen you work through challenges, work with for extra help. We see how you face challenges. We see how you overcome some challenges, and what kind of student you might be when you hit bumps in the road in college. they're not going to be as well thought out as the students who asked in the summer, maybe teach some time, maybe spend some time reflecting on your academic work with them. So make sure you're giving folks enough time to get your letters of recommendation in. And to the point earlier, do you speak up in class? If you're not engaging with any teachers in class right now, you're going to have a hard time finding someone who knows what to say about you, other than maybe you need a keep hole or something like that. And then I'll turn to activities just briefly. Activities, we care very much about what we're doing outside the classroom, and I don't know an institution that would say we rank order what's important. So if service is better than dance, or football is better than basketball, nobody does that to the best of my knowledge. But what we want to know is that you have some interest outside the classroom, because we want you to be a productive member of our community. So it doesn't matter really what it is, but we want to know that you have some interest, that you're going to keep yourself busy on our campus in a healthy and productive way, and that you're going to make a contribution. We want to know that you have some time management skills, because as you heard earlier, you're going to be in class maybe 15 to 20 hours a week in college. You probably feel like you're in class 15 hours a day in high school. With all of that extra free time, what are you going to do? Can you balance your time well? Do you have some interest outside the classroom? And will you be a productive and healthy member of our community? So we want to know that you have those skills when you're looking at activities. I always struggle with this, and I say to students, well, whatever your passion is, at 15 and 16 years old, do you have passion? You may not, and that's okay. So if you don't have something that you're devoted to at the extracurricular level, that's fine. But try things, as you heard earlier. Try things, devote some time, show us that you're involved outside your community. So if it's freshman year soccer, sophomore year is theater, junior year is service, and senior year you join the dance team, great. But when you're there, be there, so that we know you have tried things, you're looking for your passion, you're investing your time in something in a healthy and productive way. So don't panic if you don't have your passion. I remember panicking when I wasn't sure what my passion was at 15 years old. But make sure whatever it is that you're doing it with some vigor. Allow time for sleep. That's the only other thing I'll add when it comes to activities. We see students who load up on activities, who load up on APs, who spend all of their time worrying about this process throughout high school, and then they miss out on sleep, and then they're stressed, and then they're burnt out by the time they approach college. So make sure you allow some time for sleep and social life, but everything in balance as well, because you have to have sleep in college, you have to have a very, you have to know how to balance your social life in college too. So start with those.
Thank you, Allison. You've probably heard people use the word fit, and that's something we talk about in the college process. What's the right place for you? And that's really your goal, is to find the right college or colleges for you. Certainly one of the best ways in part is visiting. And our next speaker is going to speak about visiting as part of her job as the visit experience, campus visit experience director at the University of Rhode Island. Also, Dr. Erin Earle is the president-elect of the professional organization in New England, the New England Association for College Admissions Counseling. And she is a all-around admissions professional. So, Erin?
Okay, you just saw you. So at the beginning of this presentation, you came in, you were kind of like, okay, we're going to learn about college. We should see your faces as this has gone on. I know this is a daunting kind of undertaking, and especially as sophomores, you're just getting started in this process. But know that it is a marathon, not a sprint. The things that my wonderful colleagues have been talking about do not all need to happen tomorrow. And you're going to make it through this. And as Diane said, I really, truly believe that things happen for a reason, and you're going to end up where you're supposed to end up. And have an amazing time in college, right? College is fun, and it's interesting, and you get to learn and develop and grow. And so that's the good news, right? And so I'm here to talk about what seemingly is a fun part of the college process, the campus tours, but from working at the University of Rhode Island for 15 years and running our tour program for over 10, I know it can also be stressful. We see family members who have driven 5-6 hours to come to a visit, and you can imagine sometimes it's a long car ride, and they're all set with their families even before they step foot onto campus. And so what I want to do today is give you some tips and tricks on how to have a really good, not stressful campus tour. So I know Diane asked to see some hands of folks who have already gone on campus tours. So how many have already done it kind of as part of their process? Or with other children maybe themselves, perhaps. So a couple of hands. The campus tours are super great because it really does give you what Marguerite was referencing of that fit, right? And so we had a group on campus the other day, and the mom looked at me and goes, yeah, like we were here for 10 minutes, and my daughter looked at me and said, this campus just spoke to me. And she's like, I'm scared to ask what that means because I don't want her to yell at me, but that's cool. And I was like, yeah, that's super cool. And so the purpose of the campus tour is definitely to get a feel of what the distance will feel like from home. I think a lot of schools seem really good on paper, and then you might realize, oh, that's 2 plane rides away. I always need to connect through a really weird airport, or I thought the train was going to take this long, but it's actually going to take this long. And so I think going to a campus visit can give you that sense of, okay, how is it going to be getting back and forth to this institution multiple times a year? It also gives you a really good sense for what's around in the surrounding area, what's the community around the college like, what's there to do, how far away are things, how easy is it to live there. So that's a really great reason to go visit campus in person. Obviously, you can see what the facilities of the campus are like, academic buildings, the residence halls, the dining halls. It's going to kind of let you check out what types of students go there. Every college kind of has a look to it, a feel to it, types of students that it attracts. And so really, when you go on campus in person, it's something you can't really tell from the website. The brand, people, to the website. The real deal is what you see when you go to visit, right? And then also, you can get your questions answered. And we'll talk a little bit more about questions in a little bit. And it also gives you a really good kind of that vibe of the campus, right? And so when thinking about, so what I'm going to talk about today is kind of things to think about before you go on your campus visit, things to think about and do while you're there, and then maybe after your visit, right? And so a couple just tricks and tips. And so for the campus visiting offerings, there's so many different things that campuses offer beyond just a traditional campus tour. So obviously if you go on a traditional campus tour, usually they last between an hour, 2 hours. A nice ambassador will walk you around campus and tell you all the things. So those are great. But there's also lots of other things you can do. Often those are paired with an admission information session. And so if the school that you're looking at offers those, I highly recommend going to them. They're usually led by an admission counselor, maybe some students, and they tell you kind of things that you might not need to know about the process, maybe about financial aid, scholarships, different things like that. And so those are great to pair with tours. A lot of colleges and institutions offer kind of academic info sessions that might be given directly from faculty members. So if there's a College of Nursing, they might offer sessions, College of Engineering, etc. A lot of schools will offer classroom visits where you can actually go and shadow a class, learn what it's like to be in the seats and learning from the faculty members, and that's a great way to also kind of get that vibe and feel, so there's a lot of options with that. Overnight visits are sometimes a possibility. Athletic visits, so if you're looking at a school where you might be being recruited, there's a lot of athletic visit opportunities sometimes. And then there's kind of bigger visit days, so open houses and accepted students days. And some things to consider for what type of visit might be right to you. The first thing you really want to think about is, what is my personality, right? Do you get jazzed by excitement and a lot of people and a lot of things going on? If so, maybe an open house or an accepted students day would be like the right fit for you. If me just saying those words made you start to sweat, maybe going to one of those isn't the right choice, and doing a smaller program or an individual visit might be the best way for you to learn about the college. So really thinking about what might work for you can kind of help you decide what type of visit is going to be the best thing. I always caution against visiting during vacation weeks and on holidays. If you're off of school, so is the rest of the world, and it is a zoo, right? Like my colleagues and I, like, we put on armor, we prepare for school vacation breaks because there's so many people coming to different schools. And so although that's convenient because you don't have to miss school, just know that you're going to get a different type of experience perhaps because the numbers will be usually busier than colleges are used to. Also, as I mentioned, open houses and acceptance student days are amazing because you get resources that you might not see on a regular day, and so you get to see you know, a lot of times schools will offer fairs, or they'll do a presentation, or they'll have access to different things you wouldn't have access to on a regular day. But again, those can be a little busier, so just something to consider. Your tours might be busier that day, and there might be a little bit going on. But then on the other hand, lots of benefits, right? And then other things to think about is visiting in the summer. I have mixed feelings on summer visits. On one hand, I think they're phenomenal because it's nice out and it's warm, right? And you're walking around outside. But it will give you a little bit of a different vibe as far as what the campus is like. And so if you do a summer visit, and I think those are great, especially as you start becoming juniors, maybe doing some summer visits would be phenomenal. As you start to whittle down that list, you might want to go back during the school year just to make sure to verify what you did in the summer with what campus is really like. And then for winter visits, especially like these January, February, early March visits, if it's really gross out, consider if you can not go, because that'll really affect how you feel about the school, and it might have you miss an opportunity that you really would have liked, just because it's hard to really see the world when your toes are frozen or when you're sopping wet, right? And so really thinking about how the weather's going to affect you is important. Some other things before you go, definitely register online. A lot of schools offer that. If they don't have an online registration, sometimes they have called to register. Registering is important because it helps us figure out how many ambassadors to have on to try to give you the best experience as possible. And also to know who helps you, right? You can also email your school's rep if it's known. So on a lot of websites, especially if you're going from a distance and you haven't met someone from that school, you can email them and say, you know, hey, I'm coming to your school on Tuesdays, or any chance I can meet with you. And a lot of times you can find who reads your school or your state on the mission website. So if you're curious about that, you can look there. Sometimes they won't be able to meet with you because they might be off campus or doing something that day. But if they are around, we offer them to sit down and chat for 5 minutes just to make that connection, right? You also definitely kind of check traffic and travel times of where you're going. Make sure you build in time for traffic. Make sure you build in time to get lost on campus. You might say an hour and a half to use that campus, but once you get there, you might not actually know where you're going. It could add 15 to 20 minutes. And so I always feel bad for the families that fly in hot and you can tell they've had stressful travel. So try to build in some time, so you can use the restrooms, get some water before you head out on tour. And then also think of specific questions that you have for that school and who you might want to ask them to. And so there's some questions that are more appropriate for students, for faculty, for staff, for admission counselors, for coaches. And so, you know, really think about what you want to ask and who it might make sense to ask. And also try to stay away from those basic questions that you can get on the website. So doing some pre-research can really help because then you can really get into some more in-depth questions. And so in preparation for this presentation, I asked my tour guide what were their favorite questions that people asked them. And my tour guide, Brandon, who's from Littleton, Colorado, said that he loved when people asked him why he chose URI because it really opened the door to have him share his personal stories and experiences. And so definitely, you know, ask your tour guide and your ambassadors, you know, what is it about the school that makes it special? What do you love about this school? On the other side, my tour guide Ryan said that he loved when people asked what they don't like about the school. They love telling the truth, they're wild, and so they'll kind of give you that stuff. But the ambassadors love the school so much that they'll tell you the little things and the little tricks, but then they won't tell you all the things they love while they're doing that, right? During a campus tour, I definitely recommend taking notes, but definitely be careful about doing it on your phone or not, because you don't want the ambassador or the admission counselor to think that you're just texting the whole time we're on social media. And so if you do take it on your phone, maybe let them know that's what you're doing, or do it in some other way that'll work for you. Take some time to enjoy the tour and look around. Don't worry about remembering every single fact that the tour guide is telling you. There's going to be lots of opportunities to get data and facts and stuff. So really try to get the vibe, listen, ask questions, and have some fun while you're on tour. And then lastly, after your tour, try to immediately kind of write down some thoughts you had about the school, like Diane was saying, things you liked, things you didn't like. After a couple visits, they're all going to start to blend together, and then when you kind of go through the process at the end, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember what school that was at. You'll want to make sure to be able to look back at those notes. if you had a really good visit, email the admission office and let them know that you did. There's usually a generic email address if you can't find your particular reps. And that's great because it gives the tour guides a nice shout out, but also a lot of schools do keep those as part of your records. But the one thing with that is definitely be genuine. If you didn't have a good visit, you don't need to email and say that you did. So just know, but if you did have a great one, definitely let us know. We love that positive feedback. And lastly, definitely, as I kind of mentioned earlier, consider going back. And I especially say consider going back if you didn't like your tour guide or your ambassador. At schools that have 1,000, 2,000, 20,000 students, you might not drive with the one that happened to be on at 10 a.m. on the Tuesday that you came. So if you think you liked the school, and the one thing that was kind of like the myth was that ambassador, we definitely recommend going back. And maybe checking out the school in a different way if you really think that you should have liked it more than you did that first time. So the big thing, I think, is do pre-planning, do a lot of research on the web. You can watch virtual tours, but there's nothing that can replace an on-campus visit. And if you are worried about resources and money and different travel stuff, always reach out to the admission offices. Sometimes they can help you with some of those travel accommodations to make sure that you can check out their schools. Super good luck. You're going to be okay, I promise. Everyone survives this, and like I said at the beginning, you will definitely find a place that you're going to love. So I'll turn it back over to Marguerite. Thanks.
Now you have these wonderful ladies speaking to you, sharing their wisdom, but I imagine it's sort of stirred a few questions, so if anybody has questions, we'll open it up for questions and answers. Did we just overwhelm you? Yes. Common application.
The common application is one application that more than 700 colleges and universities will use as its own. It's super efficient and very effective. When you list on the common application the school that you're applying to, it will generally populate the application not only with the general questions, but also institution-specific questions.
What's also nice about the common application is there's 6 essay prompts right now, and so you can work, you only have to write the one essay. The flip side of that is the expectation is that you only have to write one, that would be good. Any questions? So in the law, okay. Okay, I think everybody heard that. Oh.
So the question was about, so the question was just about when you send in a nice note saying that you had a great visit or something, it's a handwritten note better than something that's typed up. Truthfully, most of us have gone paperless at this point. We're not reading out of paper files. So it's okay, it's perfectly fine to send a handwritten note. If you do, it will be scanned in and the council will see it on their computer screen anyway, right? So that's pretty much what's happening and coming in. What I would say about this though, another part of this is that Erin, and you picked up on this too, Erin very subtly mentioned something that said that will be added into your file. At a lot of colleges now, every time you're emailing us, every time you're contacting us, that's being added to your file. What I am not saying is that you need to email us 500 times. We will know your name for very, right, you can be known for good reasons or bad reasons. You do not need to email us 500 times, but if you email the director of admission and say, yo, I was just wondering about, no, right? So I've gotten some fairly casual emails. I've gotten some fairly inappropriate email addresses. If you're not sure whether or not you want to send me an email with your email address, get a new one, right? Like they're free. Get a new email address. So just keep that in mind, right? Because colleges are And sometimes they're linking directly to your file. It's not even us putting in there. The systems that we have right now, if it comes into my email, it's going in. If they recognize an email address, it's logging to your file. So just make sure you take a second, particularly on your phone. We've all had some fun translation moments, right, with autocorrect. Just make sure you're not sending that to a director of mission.
So to answer your question directly, either is fine. Handwritten, we'll get into the files, and electronic, we'll get into the files.
I do have something to add when you are emailing your admissions representatives. This actually happened to me last week. A student sent me this beautiful email updating me about the great things that she's doing this year. And then the last paragraph, in brackets, there was a, comment, make sure you put the right school name here. Proofread everything, honestly. When you're sending an email to your admissions representative, now that's in her file, that she didn't take the time to proofread the email that she was sending to me and all of the other schools that she applied to. So, okay.
Every student here does have an email address that's provided by the Milford Board of Education. My suggestion is that be the email address versus Uchimama or something that you use when you're communicating with the colleges. It also is great for you to start getting used to using that, contacting that email and checking it, because we'll communicate with you that way. That was a little pitch for the school counseling department.
The question is, do we do background checks on social media? No, I don't have the time for that. However, that does not mean that if it's out there, it won't cross our desk. So I have a couple of good examples of this. Yeah, I have social media accounts. I don't friend students, prospective students, anyone on our campus who's an undergraduate student. However, I have friends who are alums, and so you all know the area. You know, there's Fairfield Beach. I'm sitting in my office one morning preparing for interviews, and I'm scrolling through pictures, and I'm seeing pictures of a social gathering that happened at Fairfield Beach the night prior. And who walks into my office for an interview with a student pictured in the photos there who happen to be cousins of an alum who I am friends with. So I knew that student was engaged in things they should not have been engaged with before on our campus. We have a colleague in a different institution. He tells the story all the time. He was working at the gym, and a young woman came in and said, "Oh my gosh, I think I can see your car in the parking lot." Sure enough, she had, and it came out that she was applying to this institution. And so he said she was very nice when we handled everything. It was great. And he got into work the next morning, and someone said to him, "Oh my gosh, are you okay? What about your car?" And he said, "Well, how did you know?" She was live tweeting the whole thing, and she had hit this guy's car in the parking lot. And so he was like, "Are you like? I would have never sought you out on social media, but now I'm looking because you're referencing me in tweets." And then my third example, and I'll stop. But we have also gotten, and I assume this is totally unique to Fairfield, but we have gotten screenshots and printouts from other students' parents about their kids' friends. So if there's something that you're doing online that someone else sees, I've gotten anonymous letters from parents that said, "You were thinking about it, getting so-and-so, look what you're doing, we're posting." It's amazing what we see, but we are not often seeking these things out online, but that does not mean it will not cross our desks. And it's important for students to behave appropriately online as well. So, no, we're not seeking it, but it's out there. We know it's coming out.
Yeah, another example of that, same as Allison, I don't have time to look up everybody's, although that would probably be fun. But sometimes I look up cool stuff, and so like if you're telling me that you started a business and you started a company and you have your own website, or you do something neat, or if you were a really neat athlete and I was looking at something, sometimes I do Google students to like see the cool stuff they're telling me about, and then I find weird stuff. And so it's not like we're intentionally snooping at the social media accounts, but sometimes we will they'll say something neat, and I'm like, oh, I want to see what that is. And then you're like, oh, what's that? So I think the biggest thing in just life lesson is your social media accounts do matter and will follow you forever and ever and ever and ever.
I just wanted to add one thing. The most surefire way to get on our radar screen is to join one of our institutional Facebook pages or tweet at us from a tour, right? So at my previous institution, someone wasn't very happy with their tour, and they were tweeting out all kinds of profanities about our campus while tagging the campus in it, well, you've now tagged us, so you're on our radar, right? Like if you're tagging the school, we're going to see it, and your name is linked to that Twitter account, so that was in their file, and then they weren't accepted, right? So I don't think they wanted to come, they didn't like the tour. But if you are actually on social media trying to engage with the college, I think it's common sense, but maybe common sense doesn't always pan out at times. Like remember that they're definitely going to be watching them, right? Like you're on their platform. So, so do be mindful of that.
On the positive of social media, we'll get your question. As Diane mentioned, a lot of us do have Instagrams, Snapchat, stories, different things like that that you can do, and that's kind of a neat way to get really authentic look on what's going on campus. A lot of our student ambassadors help run those and post content and do takeovers, and so if you're looking for other ways to engage with campuses that maybe you can't visit often, that's a great way to do it in a really good positive of social media. There's also a lot of once you're admitted, like parent and family pages and class pages and different things like that that can kind of be a nice support. So in the parent one for URI right now, they're writing things like, hey, my students, we're going to come to orientation, how do I sign up? And then other parents help them like talk about that. And so those are kind of neat resources and positive aspect of the admission process in social media. Do you have another question?
Actually, so the question is there a way to be able to match your interests up with different schools, especially since there are so many schools that we talk about that you haven't heard of yet? Did I capture that? Well, actually, as luck may have it, your high school has this neat technology called Naviance. And Naviance helps send documents electronically to colleges like transcripts and recommendations. But it also has a college search engine so that the student can start putting their criteria of what they're looking for in a college into this technology. And then different schools are kind of queried and brought out to the students' and families' attention based on what that criteria is. And even more, Naviance, you can, it will connect you to the different college websites, but it also gives you a history of any kind of application decisions from your high school with that school, based on grade point averages, test scores. So that is, it's fun. It's a great way to get to know different schools that otherwise you may not have heard of. Yes.
There also are a lot of free sites online that you can look up. I mean, collegeboard.org has one that you can go on and you can kind of put in criteria. Niche, even Google actually this summer launched something. If you type in like Champlain College, right, it will give you the stats on Champlain, and then there's a tab for similar colleges you can check out. The one piece of caution that I give you is it's great to search out other similar schools. Once you find the name of school you want to check out, go to their specific website. Because like anything with the internet, there's a lot of updates and things that need to happen every year. There's a lot of false information that's out there, so you want to go to Fairfield's website, not a website where somebody who graduated 27 years ago or didn't even go there is posting about Fairfield, right? But you want to get the information from the college, not just from the internet.
Well, thank you all for coming. We'll be around for a few minutes after the end. I want to thank Diane in particular because she gave a shout out to her school counselors. We're here to help you. Let us know what you need. We will be having a program for you next year in the fall. And we will also be very willing to meet with you to discuss the college process when you would like to come in and visit with us. So have a safe ride home, stay warm, it's cold out there, even though it's March.